So I think we should give a little background about what we do. Uh, I farm 2,000 dryland acres in northeast Colorado with my parents. And when I say dryland, average rainfall is 14 to 16 inches. A year ago it was 4.5 inches. 2 years before that it was 22.5 inches. And raising a very diverse rotation of crops. Last year ended up being 12 crops. This next year is looking like 9. And with that, my dad's rule is if you raise any crop, you have to have a market for it before you can raise it, which I think is a very wise bit of advice. And so with that, we wanted to educate the consumer. So I developed a line of gluten-free mixes that we use out of making with millet flour. We also have bees, so we have honey. And then some of the other markets we sell to are not commodity markets, but large scale markets. So we do have some direct to consumer, we do home delivery. We also have, we work with a gluten-free malting company that malts grain for gluten-free beer, and they ship their malted grain all over the world. At the same time, we still do stuff in the commodity scale. So when I talk about scaling and changing some of the things, I'm not saying you're doing 100%. I'm saying you start with the piece that works for you and work on that. So we do some eggs. Also, we do some meat birds on occasion. We actually help sell our neighbor's beef. We have a website. We do mail order. We do home delivery and then farm pickup as well. So we kind of have this broad spectrum of stuff. We do a number of different flours. We have our own mill, bagging stuff. And so it's kind of do it all. And I've made some mistakes. I've learned so dang much. And the most important thing that you need to take away from this today is if you're going to do this, you're going to make more money, but you will earn every single penny that you make, because none of this comes easy and none of it's automatic.
I totally agree with Roy. So North Central Indiana, like I said, we farm 3,800 acres, and up until we started diversifying our farm, we would have been the typical Midwestern farm, mostly corn and soybean rotation. We've been no-till since 2000, cover crops since '06. And as we've gone to many of these events over the years, we all have heard diversity, diversity, diversity. And so we kind of took that to heart and tried to figure out how to get more diverse cover crops on our area, because unlike Roy, normally we were dry this year, exceptionally dry. But normally we have about 40 to 42 inches annual rainfall where we're at. So we have to use that up. And so cover crops are a good way for us to use that up, especially when we don't have a cash crop growing. So we started in the cereal grains world, bringing cereal grains back into our farm to get to a different rotation to allow for us to have some cereal grains in the rotation, and then to do more multi-species cover crops in the summertime, which then led us down the path of, well, can we direct market these cereal grains? And then and we were able to, we grow triticale, we grow for seed. Then we went down the road of barley, then we've gone down the road of buckwheat behind the triticale, which Roy kind of got me into that. That's his fault. So we then started this direct-to-market beef business, right? So everybody said we need animal impact on the land. Totally agree with that. There's a little caveat with that. If that's your line of diversity, you can actually harm your ground if you don't manage it properly. So just everybody keep that in the backside of your thinking. But again, animal impact on the ground, so we then decided, well, if we're going to go that far, we're going all the way and do it all direct market. So all of our grass-fed beef, pork, and chicken is all direct marketed. And then we started down this milling path recently, and so we have learned a tremendous amount. And our consumers that we're dealing with are really excited about where we're going next. I don't know what that is yet, but they keep asking for more.
Is your barley feed or malting barley, or do you have both?
Ours it would be considered feed because it's for cover crop seed.
Gotcha.
Yep. So, and that's the thing. I think Roy would probably agree with this. It doesn't matter what market you're looking for. Find whatever you guys are happy with and stick to that niche, because there's a niche in everything. right? So if you're not going down the flower path, go down the cover crop seed path. If that's not open, figure out whatever. It is tough. I mean, we worked for a while to get the grain sorghum element and the triticale part figured out. It doesn't mean it's for everybody, but there's something for everybody. It just maybe not, and I'm not. And Roy and I are not here telling you to do what we're doing. We're just explaining some of the challenges and the entrance ways of getting there, I guess.
Well, and the most important piece with today's consumer is they can go and buy flour anywhere. They can buy gluten-free mixes anywhere. They can buy honey anywhere. They can buy beef anywhere. The thing is you have to define yourself. And the most important thing that you have that is truly yours and no one else is your story. And how did you get to where you're at? How did your family get there? What are some stories about your family? And it's that personal connection when these people make these purchases. Market research shows that when they make that purchase in their heart, they are investing in your farm. So they are wanting that personal connection. So we have an email that goes out every 2 weeks because we do deliveries every 2 weeks. And I always have kind of what's going on the farm, or a story about products or how to use things or a recipe. And you are wanting to build a relationship. And it might sound kind of crazy to talk about that, but we've had some very personal stories told to us by consumers. With our gluten-free mixes, the one that really drove home what our focus was with gluten-free, we don't have anybody in the family that has celiacs. I was dating somebody who had gluten sensitivity, and I hated making 2 meals because that gluten-free stuff, I wouldn't feed it to my worst enemy. I mean, that stuff is nasty. And it drove me nuts that we were making 2 meals. And to me, food is so important. Food is community, food is connection. And so I wanted something that was gluten-free that I could eat. And so I started fiddling around. I had a grain mill. We had some horrible disasters that were just nasty. But we ended up actually making a product that we have a drop biscuit mix that you can't tell is not made with wheat flour. And it's unique. And I was at a large event. It was a food event. And I was working a booth of farmers, millers, and bakers. And they were handing out sourdough bread. And I'm like, what do you got for the gluten-free people? And they're like, we don't got anything. I said, I'll bring some brownies. How many brownies should I bring? And they said, 300. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not exactly what I was thinking about bringing brownies. I was thinking like a pan. And it was the middle of wheat harvest, so I was ignoring all the emails. And I got home, finished harvest, and the thing was in Denver the next day. I got home about 8 o'clock at night. It's like, okay, I need to make 300 brownies. I ended up cranking out 300 1-inch square brownies. Doing all this, I went to bed at about 6 in the morning, got up at 7, and that's actually literally true. And I was on my way to Denver, and I thought, I probably should read the emails that they've been sending me for the past week, so that way I know where to go and what's going on. And I got my 300 brownies in the car seat next to me, and I read the email, and it's an event called Slow Food Nation. And the previous year, there were 15,000 attendees. And I'm showing up with 300 brownies. It's like, yeah, I'm doing great. But I was there, people would come around and, would you like a sample? What do you have? Gluten-free brownies? Nope, I'm good. And I ended up talking some people into some gluten-free brownies because that brownie recipe is really, really good. And, but this gal comes around and she was mid-20s. And she was, people would offer samples, no. And I said, would you like a gluten-free brownie? And she said, you have a gluten-free brownie? I said, yeah, it's made with millet flour. And she goes, well, I have celiacs, I'll have one. And she took one and she ate it and she got tears in her eyes. She choked up. And it's like, oh crap, what did I do? I just screwed something up. And I'm like, are you okay? And she said, I was diagnosed with celiac disease 2 weeks ago. And I thought that I would never eat anything that tasted good again. And that is the impact of the food that you raise when you make these connections with customers. I always do the Christmas delivery, the Saturday before Christmas. I always do that. Because about half of our customers will meet me at the door with a Christmas card. And usually in the Christmas card is cash because they believe that we're not charging enough for what we're providing them. So it's a personal thing. It makes...
You can fix that, Roy.
What's that?
You can fix that problem.
You know, I don't want to fix that problem because a lot of times, a lot of things are viewed as outside the range. I base my pricing off, I go on Amazon, it's like, what does gluten-free mixes sell for? What does a similar product sell for? And that's, you know, where I'm at with pricing. And to be honest with you, I believe my prices are a little high. But the consumer doesn't. And it's kind of funny, if you price it too low, they think something's wrong with it. And that is the hardest part of sales, is how do you put a dollar figure on that?
And just so everybody understands, this is pretty open, so if you guys have questions, you can ask anytime. I mean, don't feel like you can have to sit there and be quiet. So.
And if you're going to throw something, you don't have to wait until the end.
Yeah, exactly. So, Roy has made up his nice sheet for you guys to look at and take home, and it's kind of a guide on things to think about. So, do you want to just follow this, or do you want to just kind of go?
Well, and shameless plug, I'll take the opportunity to give it. This is actually an excerpt from this, which Emily, my partner, and I are working on. It's actually how to do marketing for farmers. And we're figuring out what we're going to end up in the end, and what we're actually possibility of an online community at some point with it. But the initial piece in this is roughly what you have here. And it's kind of how do you get started in this process? And just that step by step, because when I started, I didn't know where to start. I kind of just fumbled through things, and it's daunting if you look at, oh, I'm going to mill flour and sell it at the local farmer's market. Boy, it's a simple statement, but you start breaking it down, and it can be overwhelming. And so that's kind of what this is kind of step by step, and offer it as a class, and it's probably actually going to turn into a series of videos for people to work through. But this is that initial piece of why are you doing what you're doing? Because that gives you direction. If Emily was in here, she would be like, intention, mention intention. She is so focused on intent, and she's absolutely right. Whenever you start a new project, it doesn't matter if it's selling direct or raising a different crop. You really need to have a reason of why are you doing this. And this, setting that mission statement, that's why you're doing it. And believe it or not, we have a farm mission statement. It's on the back of my business card. I have a personal mission statement that I wrote for myself. That it is amazing where my life is compared to what that mission statement says. And when I wrote it, I wasn't there. And it's something that just gives us that intent and that direction and generates thoughts. And sometimes you write down crazy stuff, and after a while it doesn't seem so crazy. Raising buckwheat, Cam, how's that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you write down an idea and you're like, that's a good idea. And then you dig into it a little bit and you're like, no, this is not who we are. This is not doing what I want to do.
So one of the other things, I'm going to just kind of go off on a tangent here, and then you guys can ask questions. And if you have any questions on anything we're talking about or anything that we haven't, just feel free to. So one of the things, he's talking about a mission statement and where we need to go. The other thing that I think that when you're putting yourself out there is we were just kind of explaining where we're from is your own story, like Roy said. But you have to put that out there in a bunch of different venues, right? So I'll just explain how we do it on our farm, and then maybe Roy will too. So when we got into this, this was one of those ideas that I told my wife, like, I said, I got this great idea, and it's not going to take much work. Okay, that was the first problem. And so she was, she reminds me of that daily now, just so y'all understand that. So we started out on the beef side and went to the milling side, but she works diligently every day, and she's the brains behind. She should be the one up here. We do the work, but she's the one actually doing the work. She gets to deal with all of our customers. We put out a newsletter every month. She's posting on social media all the time. And I never realized how much people really cared about us moving cows across the road, or moving cattle across the creek, or when we're milling, anything we're doing, it is so goofy that people want to be a part of that. And how many comments we get out of that. So it's a lot of work. We have a website, we have a social media page, and when she puts an update on there, people, it gets sent out, and it's just crazy. So, I did not think social media was going to be the avenue necessarily how we're going to manage things. But we sell things to North Carolina, Kansas, and all kinds of goofy places because of the network, that has been established by that. So it's something that it takes a lot of work. I mean, I'm not a Facebook guy, so I would screw that up. But it's amazing the amount of work that she puts into that, and labels and brochures and anything you can imagine all has to be designed by you. The website was actually the easiest part for us because we had it managed, but it's still a lot of work. It's tremendous. So if we add products, she has to be on there adding the products, the labels for the products, the pricing for the products. It is I don't want to say a full-time job, but it's just darn near. So it's something to think about.
Well, and then on top of that, if you're going to do a new product, well, then you got to learn the regulation behind it. And every state's different, and every state has their own set of rules. A lot of the stuff that we do is under the cottage food law in Colorado. A lot of states have developed cottage food laws, which are essentially home processed or home created items that are then sold to the public. And there's a set of rules for that. And currently, you only can sell in your state. Now, somebody could buy from me and send it to their friend at the other end of the earth, and that's fine. But we have to understand what the rules are for that. And it's gone so far that I'm 30 miles from the border in Nebraska. And there's a town that's 10 miles into Nebraska, and there is a really cool little coffee shop in this town. It's like, I have no clue why those people landed there, but they did. And they would love to sell our product. And they came to me and they said, we want to buy it. And in Colorado, under law, they can resell it as long as they act as a registered agent. So they have to be able to answer all the product questions. So these are all these regulations that we have to do, but they're in Nebraska, 40 miles from home. I can drive to Denver 2.5 hours away and sell it, but I can't do it to what I would almost consider a local community. And so I've gone so far, I'm active in policy work and stuff. I'm actually trying to encourage a national cottage food law, where as long as you match the rules in your state and the state that it's going to, then you're good. And the people that would be against that are the food companies, because they don't like what we're doing, because we're a threat, even though we are a drop in the bucket, because they don't want consumers to realize where their food comes from. But those regulations will just drive you insane. And, I've gotten to know the people in the Colorado offices on that, on the regulation stuff, and they're really good at being helpful. I, for a little while, was offering sunflower oil. I had a press, and we had bottles and labels and the little sealer things and the whole 9 yards. And I went and looked up the rules, and oil was not on there. And in Colorado, it has to be shelf stable for 72 hours. And it's like, well, oil's good, well, unless it's flaxseed. Flaxseed oil is good for like a month if you're lucky and refrigerate it. But sunflower oil is good for like a year. but it's not on there. So I called them up and I said, well, what about oils? They said, are you infusing those oils? And I said, no, I got a press. I just want to make sunflower oil. They said, well, we'll let you know. Come to find out, they actually held 2 meetings in their department to discuss, is it safe to have a farmer make oil and sell it for consumption? And they determined, yeah, it is. And so then they called me back and said, hey, yeah, it's great, it's fine. And the next time the list of products came out, there it was. And they're really good in Colorado at least. They're really willing to work, and they're excited that farmers are being involved in this kind of thing. But it's a headache. It's worse than packaging. Not as bad as pricing.
So one of the other things I think that needs to be, when you're getting to the start of this, and I'm jumping around a lot, so I apologize. We talked about mission statement. One of the other things you have to really come to a heart-to-heart with yourself is, where do you want this to go? What is your goal? What do you want to achieve? Okay? So do you want to just achieve a sideline business to where you can say, we raised this calf, or we ground this bushel of wheat, and we're selling it, and we've achieved our goal? And there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever your goal is, that's I guess what I'm trying to get at. It doesn't matter what your goal is. Some people have the goal of, this is going to be our new business, period, and they're going to change their whole operation over as much as they can to direct marketing. And that also depends on how big you are too, right? If you've got 20 acres, or if you got 3,800 acres, that goal will be different, right? It's just going to be how you have to manage that. My goal was never to be what we're doing today at the beginning. It's evolved about 4 times, and it'll keep evolving, I think, as we grow and make this either bigger or different. I think that's just something you guys have to get in your own head, because there's no wrong or right answer in deciding what you want to do. I know people that have gone out and put a large, vast resources to get to that point, and they're successful at it. But that's what their decision was. Our decision was to go real slow and methodical, because I'm very maybe over conservative sometimes, and saying I don't want to waste any money. I don't want to spend the extra capital on this. But then when we figure out like proof of concept, then we're all in. We're going hog wild. So, but everybody's speed needs to be, on your comfort level. You need to decide what you want to achieve, and that's part of your mission statement, I think, is what your goal is. Because now I can say, like Roy can say, we raise food. I don't raise ethanol. I mean, we do still probably to some degree. I mean, we still have corn and soybeans, but
Is that still ethanol or ethanol? Because still ethanol is a little bit different.
Well, it's worth more that way.
Yeah.
Just for corn, instance, or even wheat, you definitely make a lot more selling by the pound than you do selling by the bushel, right? I mean, we all know that. So that's the way we're not going to go out and try to market everything that way, at least at this point in the game. That's not feasible or even a goal that we have. My goal now is, on our own personal operation, is to start being able to back out of our operation. That's my goal. I have a next generation that seems like they want to come in the farm, and so my goal is to make that possible. Whether we farm 3,800 or 2,000 or whatever the number is, that's my goal, is to getting them into the operation and allowing them to make their mark moving forward. I think as an industry, we've done a really pathetic job of doing that, or we've gotten to that point. So my goal is to get out of the way, and that's kind of how we're doing it with this direct marketing thing. Is I think that we'll be able to hopefully grow that enough to get out of the way of the other side of the farm. They'll still all be connected to some degree, right? That's not going to change, but it adds enough and another income stream that we can just move aside, let everything else keep thriving, or maybe it's an add-on to everything so we keeps on thriving. I mean, I don't want to be the person that stands in the way of our farm, either moving forward, staying static, whatever. I think there will be a time I need to just step aside, still be an advisor, still be help, but just not be the main day-to-day guy. And go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about the cottage law thing. Is it quite different for processed foods versus meats?
In Colorado, meats can be sold if it's locally processed. Essentially, the people have to buy share, so they have to buy a quarter or a half, and then they pay processing costs and things like that. Otherwise, and this is everything except chickens and rabbits. It has to be USDA inspected if you want to sell it by the piece. Chickens in Colorado, if you process yourself, you can process 1,000 birds without any inspection. And I have some issues with that because there's a local processor that does birds, and I can't do it there and sell it because that's not what the law is. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. They're actually inspected, and I could be out with a rusty axe and a tub of dirty water, and it's fine. And of course, this is big food companies that are throwing their weight around is why it is what there is. And rabbits actually qualify as poultry under that law, so people can actually raise and sell rabbits less than 1,000. If it's more than 1,000, then the state will come inspect your facility, but it's not, it's up to like 20,000 birds. And if you're butchering 20,000 birds a year by yourself, yeah, it's not a cottage kind of thing. Even to me, 1,000 birds, it's like, that's a lot of work. We do like 100 at a time and do it a couple times a year. But yeah, so each state is so different. If I want to cut up the chicken and sell by piece, then it's USDA inspected. And for Colorado, the closest USDA small batch poultry processing was in McPherson, Kansas. I haven't heard if that's still open even. And so that's when it comes to birds or animals, it becomes a lot different on how that is. In Colorado, eggs fall under their own little separate category, and there's a separate license if you are a farm selling eggs. And I actually just got the notification that I have to renew mine. It's $10. They want to know how many chickens I have, and I can't sell more than 250 dozen a week. That's a lot of eggs. And the reason they want to know is the number of chickens is if you have 5 chickens and you're selling 200 dozen, there's something weird going on. And so we're actually exempt from a lot of the laws, and we actually can sell into restaurants, and grocery stores can resell for us. But every state's different, and that's where it gets frustrating. Is like you think you have the rules figured out, and then somebody's like, "Well, did you go register with FDA about being a food processor?" And you're like, "I got to do what?" It's just a piece of paper you have to fill out, but nobody tells you about it. So some of that is just kind of digging into it. I do a lot of stuff with the Farmers Union, Colorado Farmers Union, Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. It's really good about helping people with stuff like that. So sometimes those business groups can be a great source of support and direction. Colorado State Extension is actually who runs. For the cottage food, you have to come take a class on food safety. It's like a half a day. There's a quiz at the end. I'm pretty sure they just want to make sure you can write your name on that quiz. It's a pretty easy quiz. And that way you're licensed for 2 years. And so that's the requirement in Colorado. But I know New Mexico, they actually require inspection of your kitchen, even though it's your home kitchen. They send somebody from the county in to look at your kitchen. Montana, as long as it's dead, you can sell it however you want. So every state is really varied. And so that one is you're just gonna have to kind of search it out on your own.
I have a marketing company and I work with Regen Brands and stuff. But there's one, I want to just talk about a particular business model, and it's farmer focus. Are you familiar with that poultry brand?
No.
Farmer focus? Okay, what their market?
Well, ma'am, we're not here to talk about that, so thank you.
I just,
Yeah, no, I understand.
I'm sorry.
I sell my birds through my website, and people are very happy about it. So
I'm not selling their.
no, I understand. But
As far as going back to our rules are different in Indiana. I mean, but and that is a big thing. Everybody has to go back, and you're going to have to figure out your own rules in your state. Ours are different from in Colorado's. Ours are different from Illinois', just neighboring us, right? So, which isn't bad. It's just you got to get to know them. I mean, we went about it a little different way. We just went to our local health department guy and played real dumb, and he walked us through everything. And he's actually now just lives down the road from us. But and he was like, okay, you're going to need to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to need to figure this out. And those guys, I mean, you're being paid by your tax dollars, so I kind of figured I was trying to get some of my money back was by having him help us work through all the paperwork and figure out where we needed to go and not go. And he was a big help. I'm not sure that everyone would be, but he was, to us, a very big help. And getting things established. So it worked out really well for us.
And that's everybody that I've ever worked through in those kind of organizations. They are usually very, very happy to help. They think it's exciting. And I think part of it is they get tired of dealing with big food companies and all that headache.
Well, sometimes I think about sometimes I foul use my voice. Sometimes I think about the things you don't think of, as farmers. So maybe this is kind of a ridiculous question, but what about learning to manage inventories and the supply and demand issues and warehousing and some of that stuff? Because consumers are so fickle. I hate to use that. I hope no one's in here's name is Karen, but how do you deal with that?
No, and consumers are. I mean, perfect example. I had one guy, he would order 2 bags of pancake mix every month, religiously, for about a year and a half, and then never heard from him again. And it's like, was there something wrong? Or did his family just not like pancakes anymore? I have no idea what the deal is. And so they are a tricky lot. And the great part is they know you're a farm. And there's been times where something's out of stock on the website and I get an email, and the email starts with, I know you're busy on the farm, but when you have a chance, and they're actually very understanding because of that relationship that they have with you. And they're not going to have that same relationship with General Mills or Kellogg or anything like that.
So very similar situation. We run into that all the time. That has been something it's been ever evolving, and it will continue to be ever evolving, at least on our operation. Bless my wife for trying to figure it out. So we stopped butchering cattle. We won't butcher any more cattle till next summer, till the end of July at the earliest. So we've finished up. We are not doing any more butchering until then, and that's a philosophy that we've used through watching the animals, the forage quality, and trying to produce the best quality meat possible. Could we sell meat? Could we butcher meat when I say this, we actually have meat on the farm. We probably have 50,000 pounds of meat on the farm, but that's probably not right. Probably not that much, but we have a tremendous amount of meat on the farm. Figuring out the cuts they want. and saying, okay, we're going to have enough to go the distance and know that we've got enough of whatever cut they want. That sometimes can be a challenge, right? Because we're and the pork and the chicken are the exact opposite. We do all those in the summertime and then nothing through the winter on them as well. And we won't do any more until next summer on them. So you have to manage that, right? As far as how much are we going to need? What cut are we going to need? That's a challenge because it's not always the same. It changes.
Well, and the thing is when you communicate that to the consumer of this is the season for this, and if you want it, you better get it now because when it runs out, we won't have any more until July. And if they contact you and say, oh, we're looking for this particular thing, I'm sorry, it's just not the time for it. And we want it to be the best quality possible, and so you're going to need to wait.
Go ahead. So one of the ways around that is just also storage space, right?
Right.
So in milling flour and things, if you don't do it all the time fresh, you have to figure out how to store it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to go bad, right? It only has a certain shelf life. Bugs, whatever, it's only gonna be a while. If you get it below 20 degrees or get it in that realm, it'll last 2 years. Get it below 10, it's gonna last 3 years. Okay, so then you have to educate the consumer, okay, if you buy the flour, then you've got the cooler, you're gonna put it in the refrigerator or whatever, freezer, whatever, you're gonna store it, it'll last longer. So, I mean, we have chosen to go down that avenue because I know, at least today, on our operation, when we start planting corn, I want nothing else to do. So we have to manage our own inventory that way. And so we've chosen to use cooler storage or freezer storage to manage that.
So that's another part about what you're doing that I think about, that I appreciate, but I wonder if there's a challenge. So I'm guessing we're about the same age. And I remember starting out, we came of age in farming in an era that everything was going to be value added and microwavable. So we've got a whole generation that can't cook. We've lost home economics. Do you do anything to work with your customers on learning how to prepare food again?
I don't personally, because I can run a grill,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm this big because of my wife, not because of me. I don't, but she does.
She does.
She sends out recipes, she educates on what these products are good for. Even in the cuts of meat, she goes, well, this is what I do with them. And everybody asks. I mean, and so, I wish she was here today because I give her all the kudos for all the work she does educating and the customers, because it is amazing how much that is involved. It's the education, and they want to learn.
Right.
They really do want to learn. But they just don't know, and so you just have to. That's part of telling your story, education all the time.
Cameron, you sell retail pieces of meat like ribs or steak or hamburger. I mean, you don't sell whole beef quarters.
I'll sell you whatever you want.
Right answer.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yes, we do.
You just sell beef.
Yeah, so we have full line of cuts. If it's a cut, we got it. We sell. I mean, it's like, so for when we have our pigs, we have hams, we have bacon, we have chops, we have brats. We've got we've got breakfast sausage. We've got all whole list of things. Yes, on everything. We got things I've never had before. I've never heard of chicken sausage. That was a new one. And when my wife came up with that one, I thought that's the grossest thing I've ever heard. It is the best thing I've ever had. It is unreal how good it is. Chicken sausage. And it's a breakfast sausage. And I'm telling you what, it sounds gross, but it is the best in the world. It's
So
amazing.
you inventory all these cuts on your farm?
Yes. So we have 2 freezers on our farm. The first one we bought was 8 foot by 20 foot. It's a walk-in freezer that we got from Polar King out of Fort Wayne. In my opinion, they're the premier. You're going to pay it out of the. I mean, it's unreal how much it costs.
Wazoo.
There you go. Wazoo. Good term. The second one I got turned on to by a buddy of mine who happens to be in the room, Monty, and it was USA Containers out of Illinois. They actually refurbish ocean-going shipping containers. They're freezers. That they're electric, it's a 40-foot insulated shipping container. And they use them a certain amount of time, and they don't use them for ocean going anymore, so you can buy and refurbish them. Ours has pallet racking inside, or you could drive a forklift in the darn thing. It's built to do whatever. And so we've got that as well. So we've got 2 of them, and they're full right now. And it's a lot of, it's a lot of money just having all that inventory in there. We're sitting on a lot of money, a lot of inventory, a lot of risk. But what we've seen, and again, we didn't just go out and buy both these freezers instantaneously and start, but we slowly worked our way into it. But what we find is our customers keep demanding more, and so like I just went through the books before I came, not for this meeting, but because we had to meet with our accountant, and we've doubled our sales from last year. So to me, that's awesome. Does that mean next year we're going to double? I have no idea.
So you don't try and train your consumer, you try and just fill the niche of what they want. I mean, like you're.
Oh, we do a lot of training. Yeah, but if a guy says I want ribeyes, you're not going to change him off ribeyes.
So how do you handle your packaging? I mean,
It's all done for us. We do not butcher on the farm. So, and that kind of falls back to the rules. So in Indiana, if I want to sell cuts, everything's USDA. But that's not true. Let me restate that. If you want to sell in Indiana, from Indiana, you do not have to have USDA inspected. You just have to be, has to be Indiana inspected. Okay, but as soon as you go outside the state, everything has to be USDA inspected. So we have USDA packing facilities, and they do all our packaging for us.
How many head do those packers do a day as you take your produce?
I don't know how many do. They do 100 a week. I don't know what they do a day.
Yeah, so
'Cause-
they're small scale.
Yes,
packers
very small.
that they can
Got one over here.
So how do you build the relationship with the packer to take care of your slug? Like you don't do any in the fall, but they just reserve time for you.
Yeah, so what I've done is I've already told them what I want to do next year. So I've already said we're going to start in July and we're going to do whatever it is, 5 a month, all the way through till the end of November or the beginning of December or whatever. I can't tell you the number we put in already, but we've already got those dates. We've already told them, and not so much dates. We've already said we want X amount this month, this month, this month, this month, and I want when I get to this date or this time frame, I want 30 hogs or 20 hogs, whatever it is. And we just said, and so like I've already got my chicken dates for next year, and I don't have the chickens yet. But because they know so that's a relationship. We know what at least this part, we know what we're doing, and we have to have those dates because they have to run their schedule out, right? And so it's just having a good relationship with them. It works out pretty well. We've been very blessed. We've been with 3 different packers, and we're finally the one that either gets us or we get them. I'm not sure how it works, but they're very willing to work with us. And they're excited about what we're doing, and that's the cool thing. The others we're just we're just there. We're just doing business with them. But the company we're with now, they're excited that we're there. So.
Now, so with doing the production side and the retail side, do you have separation for like liability, risk, legal risk? Do you have separation of that as separate companies?
Yeah.
Okay.
So our farm, we have three LLCs, yes.
Okay. Okay. And then what about like insurance for that? I'm sure you have.
Everything's insured.
Well, and each state's different.
Right, yes, of course, that's in our state, right?
Yeah, because in Colorado, you can buy a farmer's market rider on a farm liability policy, and it's like $125 a year. And essentially you have to provide them with the addresses of the farmers markets or how you're selling. And anything that's sold through that is covered under that. I would encourage anybody, even if you're not selling direct, you should be carrying at least $2 million of liability on your operation. You will find out that second $1 million is not that expensive. It's actually pretty cheap. And then each state also has some food protection laws, and they're under cottage food, unless I make a grievous intentional mistake, I am not liable. So, but they're also really good about it's got to be shelf stable, so it's really hard to make somebody sick. You have to do something really wrong. And that's why they have their rules the way they are. So there's protection there. Of course, part of this leads to farm visits. We welcome tours. We're actually looking at doing possibly Airbnb kind of stuff off the farm. In Colorado, there's a law that if you are on a farm as a visitor and something happens to you, the farm is not liable. You are at the farm strictly at your own risk. And there's actually, you can buy signs from the state that has the statute information that you can post up just as clear as day, and it says if something happens, well, you were visiting a farm. Farms are inherently dangerous. So every state is different, and that sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing.
And I think you'll find this, again, with all the rules being different, it would be nice if it was all even, right? So when you got together, everybody was talking apples to apples, right?
No, it would be worse because California would screw it all up.
That's true. We'll take part of your guys' rules, but and in coming up with your plan, there's a million different ways to, you can stack things so easily. It's wild. So we started down this buckwheat path a few years ago. Now we're trying to mill it. An interesting sideline to that thing is we got hooked up with some bee guys in our area. Okay, that I just don't have time. I think bees are cool. I think they're neat. I'd love to do it. I have zero time to designate to bees. But we have neighbors who, that's all they're retired firefighters, they're retired factory workers. These guys just love bees. I mean, I think they just get a charge out of taking care of bees. They make it stung all the time. I don't know what the deal is, but anyway, they love it. So they brought in trailer loads of bees on our buckwheat. Our buckwheat blooms for 30 days. That's it, 30 days. And so I didn't want to mess with it, but we bought the honey, and 1,500 pounds of honey in 30 days. And that was it. So again, another one of those little things you just do off to the side, right? That just adds more benefit, adds more bottom line, adds more marketability.
How much is honey worth a pound?
Are you talking wholesale or retail? Are you talking specialty honeys or normal honey?
Retail buckwheat honey.
Retail buckwheat honey. Buckwheat honey is a specialty honey. I don't know what you guys are selling it for.
$9-10 a pound.
And I'm about 8. And the thing is once people try it, because it does not taste like honey, it is very unique.
You either love it or you hate it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot in between.
And I have 25 hives of my own. And it's always fun to go to farmers markets and sample these things. And buckwheat honey, believe it or not, honey itself has 99 different possible flavors that have been identified. And buckwheat honey is really cool because it really illustrates that our taste buds are way different from person to person. And buckwheat honey, most people describe it tastes like molasses. To me, it tastes like malt. A lot of people don't know what malt tastes like anymore. Some describe it as earthy or grassy. About 3% of the population, and it's usually female, but not always, it tastes like how buckwheat smells when it blooms. If you've never smelled buckwheat in bloom, it smells like a litter box. It is rank. Our agronomists refuse to go in the buckwheat field in the morning. By afternoon, the nectar flow is done for the day and you're good. And it's so funny to be at a farmer's market and like, here's a sample, husband and wife. And the husband's like, man, this is the best honey I have ever tasted. And the wife puts it in their mouth and they try to be polite. But the look on their face is, I have made horrible choices in my life. Because if this man next to me really likes this buckwheat honey, what am I doing with him? And you can, as soon as they taste it, it's on their face. And it's just like, you got to learn how to play it. And mine is, congratulations, you are very unique. You actually can taste the flower of the buckwheat. And so you're special. And then they still don't buy it, but at least they don't think you're. I've actually been accused of adulterating honey because of how it tastes. So
This isn't quite on track with local and direct marketing, but I'm curious, what do you do with your bees in the winter?
I make little quilts for each one of them, and yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's in all my free time I make those quilts. No, quilts you don't knit quilts. That would be okay. Yeah. We actually use polystyrene hives, which are manufactured one of the I states. It's actually an Amish fellow that his son was a bee breeder, and they started running these polystyrene hives, and it's high density polystyrene. You have a hard time denting it with your thumbnail. It actually takes hail better than wood because it's more bouncy. And the interesting thing is it keeps the hives warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer, so you get better honey flow, because there's fewer bees that are in the hive cooling the hive, because the hive, and the difference is R value, which we recognize from our own houses. A standard wood hive has an R value of 3/4, and those polystyrene hives have an R value of 8, which is 12 times the insulative value. And so it makes a difference in the production. I actually ran a dozen hives, wood hives, and a dozen polystyrene at the same time. The polystyrene that year overwintered 90%. The wood hives overwintered about 40%. So significant difference.
Survival rate?
Yes. Yeah, bees are, you gotta have a pretty tough skin, and not because of the stingers. This last year we lost almost 100%. And the thing is, in our area, that wasn't unusual. I was able to get to my hives at one point during the winter. And once I got up on top of the hill, we had a ton of snow this last winter. We usually don't get very much snow. And I finally was able to hike up to the hives because I couldn't drive anything where they were. And I was walking around, and it suddenly dawned on me I was standing on top of a hive because the snow was so deep. And the problem is, when the snow melted, it melted slow enough that the level of the snow was the entrance, and then mice got in. And it was a disaster. But buckwheat honey, there's only one crop per acre that produces more honey per acre than buckwheat, and it's linden, which is the tree. Buckwheat honey, beekeepers sometimes don't like it because it puts honey on so rapidly. It could do 10 pounds a day. And the problem with it is the bees will fill up the hive, and then they'll want to swarm because it's full of honey. But buckwheat honey is actually higher in micronutrients and antioxidants and histamines than any other honey. So people with allergies really like it. It doesn't taste as sweet to me as like a clover honey. And so people enjoy it because it's not super sugary. But it's a very unique product, and it's a bit of a byproduct, but it's also a lot of fun. You talked about, why you got into doing direct sales. The reason we got into it was education, because I was tired of seeing what everybody was saying about farmers. And if a farmer isn't telling consumers how things are being done, well, then consumers are going somewhere else. But how are you going to meet consumers? Well, the only way you can meet consumers is if you have something to sell. So we started with honey and dry edible beans and a couple of different flowers. And then we slowly evolved to where we're at. And the thing is we never intended our direct sales to be profitable. My father had said since I was very young, the most important thing that a farmer can do is to educate people about where their food comes from. And that's what we were doing. And so it was one of those, we don't need to make any money at this, because this is education. This is making farming understood and protected and valued by the consumer. And that is the most important thing that we can do. We had that attitude. We have our line of mixes. We sell to a gluten-free, we provide flour for a gluten-free bakery. And this last summer, I was contacted by an investor that offered to buy a 20% share of the mix company, which we would have to spin off into an LLC. He offered to buy a 20% share for $45,000. And it was like, oh, this is actually something that could be legitimate. And so now we have a building that we're working on getting strictly for that. We've had a discussion of we're probably going to end up hiring somebody at some point. And on our farm, we don't believe in minimum wage jobs. We don't believe they're proper for the community. It doesn't matter if they're running a piece of equipment, or if they're pushing a mower, or if they're bagging mixes. Our minimum is $16 an hour. And then we're going to also talk some benefits on top of that. Because in our area, a job that pays that well is not very common, and the people that would take that job is going to be a neighbor's wife, somebody's kid that's back from college. It'll be something that would help support a household, but it's not designed to pay for the household. Where a lot of the part-time jobs that are out there, they pay minimum wage and there's no benefit and they don't care. And that's not why we're into this.
I have a story about educating the farmers. I think that's interesting. When my kids were little, for some reason, the teacher knew I was a farm manager, so I would come in, bring the ear corn, tell them to count the kernels around, always even. you know, like that. Well, then, this last year, my daughter, who is a teacher, said, Dad, they're doing a career day. Why don't you come and talk about farming and agriculture? So I did a PowerPoint presentation, you know, brought in the toy tractor and planter and combine and stuff, you know, and they wanted to play with that more than they were. But anyway, show them, you know, how important agriculture was, show a picture of a beef animal, a dairy animal, and pig and chickens and sheep and all this stuff, and explain where it came from. And I was talking about, I think it was, said, how many of you like, you know, to eat bacon? Oh, yeah. You know, show the picture of the pork. One of those kids says, do you have to kill it?
But it's a prime example of where does your food come from? And that's a piece that's really missing. And really, that was one of the benefits of COVID, because that's the first time in a lot of people's lives that there was a shortage of something. And then it made them realize how important it is. The problem is it also confused a lot of people about things. I have a friend who worked for Arden Mills in Denver. He was so frustrated during COVID. He was literally giving 50-pound bags of flour away because everything they had bagged was for restaurants and bakeries. But it was, people didn't want to buy a 50-pound bag of flour. They wanted 10 pounds. And for them to rebag it was this huge hassle. And so then there was the belief there was a shortage of food, which is like, and talking to him at Arden Mills, they actually have enough flour on hand for like 12 months and enough grain for an additional 18 months. So they have years worth of stuff on hand. But it was that impression there was a shortage, but it suddenly gave value to food. And then people started asking, where does my food come from? And that is when the farmer became important again. And it's, we need to take advantage of that. We need to tell that story. We need to help educate. And that's why we started doing direct sales, and come to find out it might turn into something more significant than farming.
2 or 3 more questions?
I don't even know what time it is.
Cameron, how big is your population base, your target market for your beef sales?
United States. Space is no, I mean, it doesn't matter, right? If we can ship it, we can sell it. I mean, our county is, well, just for instance, our county probably has, I don't know, probably 40,000 people in it. So we have a couple small towns. We're 3 hours from Chicago, an hour and a half from Indianapolis. So we're a ways away from real big towns. But what we find is it's funny how things work. So if you do a good job and you really tell the story and you take care of your customers and you provide a good product, your customers will also be one of your better promoters just by word of mouth. So we have a lot of new sales in beef because we sold one customer at a Delco plant in Kokomo beef. And they really loved it. So they're telling all their buddies that work at that Delco plant, which is great. But they also live in Noblesville, right on the outskirts of Indianapolis, so they've sold to some of their friends. And so some of our new additional sales are coming from people we probably wouldn't have reached without that word of mouth, even though we're trying. You know, you can go to farmers markets. We've never been to one yet. We're going to go. This will be our first year, this next summer. So everything we've done, I mean, it wasn't my goal to do that. But we got to looking at some of the farmers markets around, and they don't have what we offer. Mm-hmm. So if nothing else, we thought, well, why not reach another line of customer? It may be a colossal failure. I have no idea, but we're going to do it.
You know, farmers markets are interesting. And it's a great opportunity for education. That's why we went there. And I've had conversations started with, what do you do? I'm a farmer. You don't use that evil glyphosate, do you? And yeah, and this is why. And after a 20-minute conversation, it ends with, well, it's okay if you use glyphosate, but I don't know about other farmers. Okay, you'll have to meet them all then. But I have people come up and shake my hand and thank you for being a farmer. Thank you for raising the food that my family consumes. And so you find out that you actually are valued for what you're doing when you put yourself out there and allow the public to know who you are.
What percentage of sales do you have online compared to offline for both your operations?
You mean like shipping versus coming to the farm to pick it up? Oh, I would say majority of everything. A majority of our sales come to the farm, or we, a delivery, but and we do ship some. We started doing that. That's still not the main part of our business, just because shipping is so expensive.
Yep.
Right, and so then we have shipped beef to Kansas City, Chicago, South Carolina. South Carolina's a little tricky, depending on the time of year it is. We have done those things. It's not where I want to go, but I guess if the customer wants it, that's what we'll do what they want. I prefer them coming to the farm because it's less money that I got to spend, and really them too, right? If they're coming by, you can have pickup points. I mean, when we go to the the farmers market this summer, we're going to use them as pickup points for customers. So.
Yeah, we do a little shipping. I prefer not to. I mean, for a small box, it's $16. And so it's really hard to justify that. But we do weekly, or every 2 weeks, we deliver into 2 different zip codes, and one in Denver, one in Boulder. And we have a pickup point for the people that aren't in that zip code. And most of our sales, we do home delivery inside those zip codes. And you think home delivery is a pain? Home delivery is way better than a pickup point, because you can go to their house, and if they're not home, well, you told them that you're a company, you drop it off, and that's on them. Where they forgot about it, and you're sitting there waiting for them to pick up a delivery, then you start calling, and you texting, you're trying to get a hold of somebody, and then, because my thing is, I feel obligated, these people buy it, I should get it, and I value that more than my time. And that's where that gets difficult.
I think your customers will tell you whether they want shipped or not. Meaning, the shipping is going to be the same, for the most part, wherever you go. But I'm just saying that they'll dictate that to you, right? So you can offer that, and if they don't take it, then they're not interested.
So the next question is, how do you set boundaries for timelines for people showing up, like?
So in our situation, we have set hours, right? So we are opening a retail space at our own farm, so that's maybe our hours are going to change here sometime after the first of the year. But for the most part, my wife has set times, so it's whatever the time is. So it's like, say, 10 to 3 on Saturday, or Monday, 4 to 7 in the evening. But if she has set times that are on the website, these are pickup times. And so if you call, she'll pull your order, and it's already sitting there. So even if she happens to be gone, I'm there, or one of the kids is there, somebody's there to fill their order, get it for them, no big deal. And so it works out really well. It's amazing. And once in a while, you'll have some goofball that, I didn't even look at the website. You take care of them, right? It's just part of the game. But once they figure out the system, they really stick within it, and they're really good about it.
Now, there's something I wanted to mention. It happened right at the beginning of COVID to a local producer in our area. They went to a surplus auction, and there was a semi-load of 7.5 cubic foot freezers, and they bought it. And their wife's like, why did you buy that? And it's like, I have an idea. I'm going to sell people a beef and rent them the freezer. And everybody thought he was nuts. And halfway through COVID, he was looking for semi-loads of freezers and could not find them. And the great part is once that freezer's at somebody's house and that thing gets empty, they call him back and order another quarter or half. It's a different way, because people don't necessarily have that storage space. But at least they're paying the electric bill on that freezer instead of you paying the electric bill on that freezer. So it's sometimes crazy ideas work really well.
You mentioned you had a customer base that sprung up in Noblesville. Then did that become a new pickup point when it got to a certain size, or how did you handle that? And then can you describe that transition? You had the first customer, and then it grew a little bit, and how did you continue to service them before it became more profitable to service them?
We have not yet added that as a pickup point, because they actually like coming to the farm.
Okay.
Again, you'll learn. The customers will dictate what they want, right? And so that's the cool. You just got to listen to what they want. So we have a Lafayette. I'm going to use as an example. My wife goes to a chiropractor in Lafayette, Indiana. Okay, that is a pickup point when my wife has an appointment. It's goofy, but the chiropractor loves the beef. Is a customer of ours. Several people work in the office are customers of ours. And so Carol just tell them, hey, I'm coming, you know, or if we got an appointment, she goes, I'm gonna be in Lafayette at so-and-so's doctor's office, and you would be shocked how many people will then chime in, hey, okay, I need this, I need that, I need this. Not always, sometimes you don't get a lot, but you know you're taking me to the chiropractor, so it's, we've joked, we might as well just have a freezer inside their office. But again, and so there's nothing, I mean, that will dictate. People know Noblesville love driving. They drive 45 minutes to our place. They like doing that. They love seeing Kara. They don't care about me, but they love seeing Kara. They love her conversation. She's a people person, and they love just being there and visiting for a few minutes. I think there's a lot of room for that. And then there's some people that only want convenience, of course, as we all know, and that's fine. If they ever get to the point where they say, man, we'd love for, you know, if you ever get to the point where you're delivering, well, then they'll take that step down there. But right now, if they're willing to come, I'd say it's gas money.